Welcome back to A1 Storyteller, where real-life stories meet powerful emotions. Stories that don't just touch your heart, but grip it tight and refuse to let go. Today, we bring you a story that will leave you shaken, angry, and ultimately inspired. It's a story about injustice so raw and so painful that it could have easily ended in tragedy. It's about a man who rose above the hate that tried to destroy him, and a town that was forced to face the darkness it had hidden for too long. Imagine working your entire life, fighting tooth and nail to rise above every barrier placed in your path, only to be dragged down in a single and sudden cruel moment, not because you did anything wrong, but simply because of who you are. Imagine returning home not as a victim, but as a victor, ready to pour your success into the place that once tried to break you, only to find that the hatred you thought you'd left behind was still waiting, sharp and deadly as ever. Today's story is not just about Jordan Miles, a man who dared to come back and give hope to a place that once showed him none. It's about every unseen wound, every whispered fear, every silent battle that Black men and women fight every single day just to exist, just to dream, just to breathe, just to breathe. It's about a system that tried and failed to crush a spirit too strong to be broken. It's about the brutal hand of racism, the devastating impact of betrayal by those sworn to protect, and the quiet, relentless courage it takes to stand tall when the world tries to make you kneel. Stay with us until the very end, because what starts as heartbreak will turn into a surge of hope so powerful, it might just bring you to tears. This is not just a story. This is a reckoning. This is A1 Storyteller. Jordan Miles had left Willow Creek years ago, carrying nothing but a duffel bag full of dreams and the determination to make something of himself. Growing up Black in a town that never truly accepted him, had carved scars that even time couldn't fully heal. He had faced whispers behind his back, doors slammed in his face, opportunities yanked away just because of the color of his skin. But Jordan had promised himself that one day he would return, not in defeat, but in triumph. After years of grinding through college, launching his own tech company from a tiny apartment, and pushing through endless obstacles, Jordan made it. He became a self-made success in a world that never thought he would. Coming back to Willow Creek was supposed to be a victory lap, a chance to lift up the next generation so they wouldn't have to fight so hard just to breathe. Jordan bought an abandoned lot on Main Street with plans to build a state-of-the-art community center for kids who needed a safe place to dream big. It wasn't just a building, it was hope, stitched together with every painful memory Jordan had ever endured. But as he parked his sleek Tesla in front of the lot that hot afternoon, clipboard in hand, he had no idea that the very town he wanted to heal was about to rip open old wounds all over again. Officer Darren Cole had been lurking, patrolling the streets of Willow Creek with a chip on his shoulder and prejudice in his heart. To him, Jordan wasn't a symbol of hope or hard-earned success. He was just another Black man in the wrong place, daring to exist where he didn't belong. When Cole saw Jordan standing by the property, dressed sharp and looking confident, it didn't matter that Jordan had paperwork proving he owned it. It didn't matter that Jordan had done nothing wrong. All Cole saw was a threat to the old broken world he clung to. Driven by rage disguised as authority, he pulled his cruiser up fast, lights flashing, siren blaring, a show of force meant to humiliate, to break. The hate in his voice dripped with venom as he shouted at Jordan, demanding to know what he was doing there, like Jordan had no right to dream, no right to belong. In that moment, years of progress, years of Jordan's hard work, were crushed under the weight of a hatred that refused to die. Jordan barely had time to explain himself before Officer Cole's anger erupted into violence. With no warning, no justification, The officer shoved Jordan hard against his car, the sharp edge of the door digging into his ribs. Jordan winced but stayed silent, knowing that any protest, any sudden movement, could be twisted into an excuse for worse. His heart raced, not from guilt, but from the sick, familiar fear that no amount of success could ever erase. He tried again to show the deed to the property, his voice steady, but Cole wasn't listening. The officer's hands yanked Jordan's arms behind his back with brutal force, the cold metal of the handcuffs biting into his wrists. Every gesture was meant to humiliate, to strip Jordan of his dignity, to send a clear message. No matter how far you climb, you're still not safe here. Jordan didn't resist. He couldn't, because in places like Willow Creek, fighting back meant risking your life. Every child walking past, every old man sipping coffee across the street, they all saw it happen, and deep down, many of them had seen it before. But this time, something was different. Across the street, a mother clutching her child's hand pulled out her phone. A teenager delivering groceries lifted his camera. A retired school teacher sitting on a bench pressed record. Dozens of eyes watched Officer Cole slam Jordan against the hood of his own car, watched the proud young man who had returned home to lift up the town, get dragged away like a criminal. The gasps, the murmurs, the stunned silence. It filled the thick summer air heavier than the heat itself. In those precious minutes, as Jordan was forced into the back of the police car, a town that had once turned away from injustice now had it captured frame by frame. And with every recording, every shared look of disbelief, the tide began to shift, the first crack splintering a system that had gotten away with cruelty for far too long. Unknown to Officer Cole, Jordan's Tesla was more than just a car. It was a fortress of truth. As the assault unfolded, the vehicle's 360-degree dashcam recorded everything in heartbreaking clarity. Every cruel shove, every racist word, every moment when Jordan's humanity was stripped from him. It was all captured, impossible to spin. The soft whir of the cameras, almost inaudible beneath the chaos, became the silent witness Jordan had prayed for. Inside the vehicle, a built-in live stream had already begun broadcasting to a private server, sending the footage straight to trusted eyes beyond the reach of Willow Creek's corrupted hands. Jordan hadn't planned for this moment, but some part of him had always known it might come. Some part of him had always known he had to protect himself, even here, even at home. The cameras recorded not just the brutality, but also Jordan's heartbreaking calm, the way he kept his voice steady, the way he never once fought back, even as his spirit was trampled in broad daylight. It recorded the truth that too often went unseen, the truth Jordan knew could mean the difference between justice and another forgotten name. Miles away, Layla Brooks sat in her office, sifting through case files when her phone buzzed urgently. At first, she thought it was just another alert, another small task demanding her time. But as she glanced down and opened the live feed from Jordan's car, her blood ran cold. She watched, helpless and horrified, as the cousin she loved like a brother was manhandled and mocked by a man wearing the badge of authority. The pain in Layla's chest tightened with every second, her fingers trembling as she clutched her phone. She knew immediately that she had to move fast. Every moment counted when it came to protecting a black life under threat. In an instant, she transformed from cousin to warrior, her heart shattering and hardening all at once. She wasn't just going to get Jordan out of that jail. She was going to tear down the walls that had made it possible for this to happen in the first place. So, Layla stormed into the Willow Creek Police Department with a fire in her soul that no one could extinguish. Her heels clicked sharply against the worn linoleum floors as she demanded to see her cousin, her voice cutting through the stale, cold air like a blade. The officers behind the desk tried to brush her off, tried to pretend she didn't matter, but Layla wasn't some outsider they could intimidate. or dismiss. She was a civil rights attorney who had seen too many families destroyed, too many lives stolen, and she had come armed with truth, fury, and a legal team already assembling outside and outside. She slammed Jordan's property deed and the dashcam footage onto the counter, her hands trembling not from fear but from the sheer rage and heartbreak boiling inside her. "Release him now," she said, her voice low and lethal, "or I will bury this department in lawsuits so deep you'll beg for a lifeboat." The officers exchanged nervous glances, suddenly aware that this wasn't going to be swept under the rug. Under the rug. Layla wasn't just fighting for Jordan. She was fighting for every unseen soul that had ever been crushed beneath the weight of injustice in that town. She would not back down. She couldn't. By the time Jordan stumbled out of the holding cell, bruised but unbroken, the world outside was already starting to roar. The videos from the bystanders had gone viral within hours, sparking a tidal wave of outrage across social media and national news. Hashtags bearing Jordan's name trended. Protesters began gathering outside the department, and anchors with trembling voices replayed the footage that laid bare the rot at Willow Creek's core. People who had never met Jordan wept for him, mourned for him, raged for him. It wasn't just another case of injustice whispered about in dark corners. It was a blazing wildfire of truth that couldn't be ignored. Jordan, once invisible in the eyes of his own town, had become the face of a broken system. And as the world watched, holding its breath, there was a silent prayer carried on every tear and every voice raised in anger, that this time, maybe, justice would finally be louder than hate. Officer Darren Cole sat stiffly behind his desk as the walls around him began to crumble. The chief's voice, usually calm and dismissive when handling complaints, was sharp with panic now, slicing through the heavy silence of the precinct. Word had come down from above. Suspension without pay, effective immediately. Cole tried to argue, tried to spin a story about how he felt threatened, but no one was listening anymore. The videos were everywhere. The world had seen the truth in his sneer, in the brutal way he had thrown an innocent man against a car. There was no badge that could hide him now, no thin blue line thick enough to protect him from the tidal wave of fury crashing down. As he cleared out his locker, the stares from his fellow officers burned into his skin, some filled with shame, others with fear that they might be next. For the first time, Darren Cole felt what it was like to be powerless, to be judged before speaking, to be treated like a threat without a chance to explain. And it wasn't bravery or honor that filled the space he left behind. It was silence, heavy and ashamed, the silence of a house built on lies finally starting to fall. The storm didn't end with one man's downfall. Willow Creek itself was thrust into a blinding spotlight. It could no longer outrun. Run. Federal investigators descended like a cold wind through the hollow streets, opening case files long ignored, pulling at threads of corruption that had been stitched into the town's fabric for generations. Every complaint dismissed, every voice silenced, every tear shed in back rooms and empty fields. It was all rising to the surface now, undeniable and roaring. The police department's polished front cracked wide open, and the rot inside spilled out for all to see. Longtime officers were called in for questioning, supervisors removed, policies rewritten under the sharp eyes of strangers who were not fooled by small-town smiles. Willow Creek, once a place where injustice was a dirty little secret, became a name spoken in every courtroom and news broadcast, a warning of what happens when cruelty is left to fester. And in the center of it all was the haunting image of Jordan Miles, a man who only wanted to build hope, standing bruised but unbroken as the world began, at last, to listen. When the settlement came, it wasn't a celebration. It wasn't a victory parade or a moment of triumph. Jordan stood before the cameras, holding the oversized check that represented the town's attempt to buy its way out of shame. and he felt the deep, hollow ache of a man who had lost something far more precious than money could ever replace. They could write all the zeros they wanted, but they couldn't erase the look on his mother's face when she saw him bruised and battered. They couldn't pay away the terror in his niece's eyes when she learned what had happened to her hero. But Jordan made a promise to himself. If pain was the price, then hope would be the reward. He used every penny to break ground on the community center he had dreamed about for so long. It rose up on Main Street like a fortress of resilience, built with bricks soaked in tears and laughter, a place where children would be seen for their brilliance and not their skin. For their brilliance and not their skin. Jordan called it Miles of Hope, a name whispered through Willow Creek like a prayer. A reminder that even in the shadow of hate, something beautiful could grow. And every time he unlocked the doors, he felt the weight of history bending just a little toward justice. Meanwhile, Darren Cole's world shrank to the size of a dingy apartment and a phone that no longer rang with offers of respect or authority. His name, once spoken with a nod among his peers, had become a curse spat in the streets. The jobs dried up one by one. No department wanted a badge stained so publicly. No security firm wanted a man whose face was burned into the national memory as a symbol of cruelty. He scrolled through news articles late at night, the blue light of his phone casting hollow shadows across his face, reading story after story about the man he had tried to destroy and the dreams he had tried to crush. And somewhere deep inside, where pride once lived, there was only a gnawing regret, not just for losing his job, but for losing whatever piece of his soul he had traded for a fleeting moment of power. Jordan Miles had built a future. Darren Cole had buried himself in a grave of his own making. In a grave of his own making. And the town of Willow Creek, for all its scars, had learned that sometimes even the deepest wounds can teach a broken heart how to heal. And there you have it, another chapter of truth carved into the soul of history. Jordan Miles didn't just survive. He turned his scars into bridges, his pain into power, his story into a beacon for those still walking through the shadows. In a world that so often chooses to look away, he made sure they could no longer be blind. But this story, like so many others, leaves us with a question. How many more voices must break before we finally listen? How many more dreams must be crushed before we stand together and say, enough? At A1 Storyteller, we don't just share stories. We honor every heartbeat behind them, every silent tear shed in the dark, every brave soul who refuses to be forgotten. Because their battles are not just their own. They belong to all of us. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something deep inside that you can't ignore, don't let that feeling slip away. Carry it forward. Share it. Talk about it. Fight for a world where no one has to live this pain again. Thank you for being part of our family. Thank you for believing that stories, real stories, can change the world. This is A1 Storyteller, and we're just getting started. Stay strong, stay awake, and most of all, stay human. We'll see you in the next story.